I'll do that now.
Okay, we'll be live.
We're just going live now. So whenever you are. Yeah,
Tell me when I can start.
whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. All right, well, welcome everyone. So just got my official bits to kick off with. Just to say, in accordance with council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recordings will be available both on the council's YouTube channel as well as on the council's ModGov site alongside the documents from the meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone, members, officers and members of the public to the first virtual Royston Area Forum. And apologies, by the way, if you see me looking off to the side, I'm not being distracted by something. It's just where I've got my notes to read from as I go through the chairing. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the community officer to explain how proceedings will work and to undertake a roll call of those attending online to ensure they can hear and be heard.
Thank you. Just checking I'm not on mute. I'm Claire Morgan, the Community Partnerships Team Leader. And as this is not a formal council meeting, the public are allowed to speak and ask questions. But please raise your hand, wave, or use the reactions to indicate that you want to speak. And we'll try and hopefully the chair will see it, or if not, our IT support will be able to communicate with him to let him know that somebody wants to speak, but probably just waving would be good. Say your name when you speak. That will help. I'm going to be taking the notes for the meeting, so that helps me. And also anyone that's watching on the live YouTube or watching it back on YouTube. We'll be receiving presentations from the community group seeking grant funding. Councillors will be voting to make a recommendation to the executive member for community and partnerships. The community partnerships officer will clearly state the result of the vote and the chair will proceed to the next agenda item. In the event of a tied vote, then the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? Good. And so if I just do the roll call, just so that we make sure that everybody's microphones are working, we can hear everyone. So I'm going to kind of go round from left to right as you appear on my screen. So I've got Councillor Adam Compton.
Hi there. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Barnes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Laura Hyde from Resolve.
Hello there, hi.
Hello. Amanda from Home Start.
Yes, hi.
You're a little bit quiet, Amanda, so if you can make sure you're nice and close to the microphone on your...
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, that is a bit better, actually. Thank you.
Shout.
Councillor Bryony May.
Yes, hello.
Thank you. We've already heard from Chris. We can hear you okay. Councillor Fiona Hill.
Hello, here.
Yeah, thank
Present.
you. Pete Wolseley, you need to remind me where you're from. Sorry, Pete.
That's okay. I'm from Royston and District Community Transport, Claire.
Lovely. Thank you very much. County Councillor Steve Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Laura Hartley is doing IT support for us. She may chip in. Are you going to say hi, Laura?
Oh, hello.
Thanks. Alice Misler.
Hi, yeah, I can hear you.
Lovely. And Anna Bradley. Oh, Anna's... Oh, good, that she's fine. Anna's from county, but she's doing some strategic planning on transport, so she wanted to listen into this meeting. And finally, Robert Lancaster.
Yeah, I can hear all okay.
Lovely, thank you very much. I'll hand back to the chair to continue with the meeting.
Thank you very much, Claire. So as this is not a formal council meeting, the public are allowed to speak and ask questions, so we've covered that, haven't we? So we can move on. All right, apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Ruth Brown. Are there any further apologies?
there is Councillor Gerald Morris as well, who sent his apologies over today, Chris. Or sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Anyone else? I don't think that's pretty much all, isn't it? Okay, so on to item 2, the minutes of the area committee from the 2nd of March 2023. I propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting of the area committee held on the 2nd of March 2023. Do I have a second?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. We go to the vote then.
I'm just going to stick my hand up. Sorry.
How do we vote? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't there, so.
I think that was everyone voting yes. I hope so. Good, looks like it. Got nods. All right, great. So that's item 2. Item 3, Chair's announcements. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. They may wish to abstain from voting if they have an interest, but they're merely making recommendations and not decisions. Right, so on to item 4, public participation in relation to grant applications. Can I invite the Community Partnerships Officer to update members on budgets, please?
Yes, absolutely. Let's get that report up. Okay, you will have seen the papers for this meeting under financial implications, item 5. It outlines that the current budget available at this meeting is 4,316. The total amount of funding requested from the 4 grants we're hearing this evening is 4,635. So we've actually got a shortfall of 319. So members are going to have to decide this evening how you want to kind of equate that shortfall, and whether you want, once you've heard the grants, but you can decide if you want to shave a bit off each grant award, or you may not want to recommend all the grants, but that would be up to members.
Thank you, Claire. Adam, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. So one question I did have around the remaining budget was whether this is factored in the amount we normally hold back for 3 after 3 parking for next year. I know it's been paid this year, and a large part of that came out of last year's budget, but I was just wondering if that's also been ring-fenced or not.
I didn't think you'd paid any 3 after 3 this year. Let me just check the budget sheet. Is that the budget sheet? It is the budget sheet. It's just taking on. Yeah, no, there was no, in this year's budget, you haven't paid any 3 after 3. It was decided that it was not worth doing, and that taking community money to pay for parking charges wasn't necessarily the right way to spend a community budget, which should be spent on good causes and community activities.
Right, okay. So that must have happened at the last meeting, which I was not present at. So apologies for the question.
Thanks, Adam. Fiona, I saw your hand go up. Was that specifically in relation to that point, or did you want to come in separately?
No, if you don't mind, I know Matt was before me actually, but it is regarding that point, because Claire is partly right, but we're actually still waiting for information, because I'm still holding some of my locality budget funding pending a decision on what's happening there. So would it be possible to take an action back to try and find out exactly what's happening on that? Because obviously we need to start allocating the rest of our funds for this financial year. And if we allocate and then suddenly discover that we're actually having to pay some money back, I think Councillor Jarvis will probably agree with me on that, that both of us haven't received anything back yet on that.
Yes, I'll put that down as an action, but I'm pretty sure there was a decision made that Royston Committee would no longer be funding parking.
Okay, thank you. We haven't been actually given formally from county yet what's happening on that. So that's brilliant. Thanks, Claire.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Claire. Matt, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just on before we start discussion of the next item, I should declare. I think I should declare an interest, even though it's not a decision-making body. It's only a recommendation in the item on Home Start, because my wife is employed there. So I think it's probably prudent if I withdraw from that part of the discussion, if nothing else. But I'll take your advice on that.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Just for clarity, were you intending to withdraw from the entire agenda item around grant making this time around, or just on the decision regarding Home Start?
Yeah, I should have checked this before, but I was thinking just the decision on Home Start, but obviously if that has some overlap with decisions on other items too, then
Claire, are you able to give any advice on this, Matt?
Yeah, that's a good point. I was going to
I did
say
notify this last week. I
was going to say it was probably best if Matt sits out for the discussions around Home Start. But yes, as there's going to be discussions about how the money is allocated between the three grants.
It may be difficult to.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, yeah, then it's probably best for me to step out of that whole item.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
Adam, your hand's back up.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, just last question around the budget and the parking. Who made the decision to remove 3 after 3? Claire, just so I can follow up on that, just because that's it's just new to me. Sorry.
I think it went through the director of community, legal and community.
Okay. Thank you. I'll pick it up.
Okay, thanks everyone. I think just a couple of other points of clarity is that Claire, am I right in thinking we will have another area forum meeting this financial year?
Yes.
Which we haven't yet received any grant requests for, but theoretically that would be possible?
Yes, but if there isn't any money in the budget, what we'll do is ask people to defer their applications until the next meeting in the new financial year when there's budget available.
Yeah, okay. So I just think that's worth members bearing in mind that we may, if we spend everything tonight, we may need to ask people to defer in the future. Okay, and in the interests of fairness for tonight, what I think I'm going to suggest is that we go through all of the presentations for the grant requests before making any decisions, and then make decisions subsequent to that. So if everyone is happy with that, I would like to invite Amanda from Home Start to do your presentation, please.
Amanda, you're on mute. Sorry.
Right, is that better? Yeah, I was just saying that I hope everyone can hear me. I'll try and speak up if my volume isn't high enough, but let me know. Please let me know if you can't. So
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Great. So I am a fundraiser for Home Start, and as many of you will know, our charity has been supporting local vulnerable families for over 40 years through our volunteer-led home visiting service and specialist family supports groups in Royston, Buntingford, and latterly in Mildred, South Cambridgeshire. Without our support, families are at risk of facing crisis situations, including family breakdown, which could result, among many other things, in substantial cost to statutory services. In 2022-24 to date, we have supported 35 vulnerable families in Royston and surrounding villages And in total, across our areas of operation, we have supported 82 families. We are requesting a £1,635 contribution towards the running costs of our specialist Royston Family Support Group for this spring term 2024. The sessions take place weekly during term time, and each session lasts 2 hours. The funding would cover 7 of the 11 sessions for this term, from 8th February to the 28th of March. Participants in the group include socially isolated and marginalised local families with children under 5 to successfully integrate into the local community. Most families, sadly, also have additional needs such as challenges with mental health and self-esteem, and children often have developmental delay as well as other issues, for example, ADHD. For spring term, we have 13 families attending, and that includes 19 children under 5. The sessions are held in a safe, supportive and non-judgmental environment, which is very important for participants. Families are invited by our staff to attend, and the group isn't open to the public. Different structured activities are planned for each sessions and are delivered by 1 staff coordinator and 6 specially trained volunteers who support the parents and also facilitate children's play. The activities are designed to improve the mental health and well-being of participants. Children's activities are in line with the early years foundation stage guidelines and are targeted towards specific objectives such as communication and language, social confidence, and turn-taking and sharing. Royston Family Support Group makes a huge difference to the life of participating families. Parents develop friendship and a peer support network, which actually continues after they have left the group. They gain the knowledge and skills to access local organisations and become positive, integrated members of the local community. The sessions also support parents' mental health and self-confidence. Children develop improved communication skills, have the confidence to play with other children separately from their parents, have improved concentration and behaviour, and are more prepared for the transition to nursery or school. They also have increased physical and emotional well-being. I'm just going to read out 3 short quotes from parents, which really illustrate the positive impact the group makes on their lives. So the first parent said, "Emotional support is brilliant, just being able to chat about problems without being judged." Another said, "I have been able to meet people for the first time in years, so I'm really happy about that. It's amazing to see how my son's confidence is growing by attending family group." And the third participant said, "I've also made a connection with some of the other parents as they can identify with my situation. The activities for the parents are fantastic and I feel really pampered and enormously supported." So thank you so much for considering our application, and should you have any questions, do please ask them. I shall endeavour to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So over to my council colleagues to ask any questions. I have one, but I'm happy to take anyone else if they've got any other questions before that. So it's Adam or Bryony, I think it would be either of you. Either of you got anything? Sorry,
can't find the raise hand button. Chair, I've just gone into half screen to whilst I was reading through the notes as well. I've got no questions, Amanda. I think Home Start do a brilliant job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think you've come for the last few years, and certainly since I've been a district councillor, and Home Start have always given a fantastic presentation. So just keep doing what you're doing. No questions, just a statement. I do apologise.
Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. So Amanda, my question I think is perhaps a bit of an inevitable one for this evening. What would the consequence be for your services if we are unable to meet the full budget request that you've made, would that mean that you deliver fewer sessions, or do you have hopes of being able to find funding elsewhere if it's not entirely forthcoming from the area forum?
Yeah, it's a bit late for us now to find funding from elsewhere, but what we would do is we would either use some of our reserves that are set aside, or if we have any income that we've raised, unrestricted income, we would hope to be able to use that. It's vitally important that we keep going with the family support group, so we wouldn't want to cut that for families, because often it's the only time that they go out during the week. It's an absolute lifeline for them. So we would do everything we can to endeavour that we can continue to provide all the sessions.
Brilliant. That's really useful to know. Thank you, Amanda. And like Adam said, a really great presentation.
Thank you very much.
So if there's no further questions from my colleagues at the moment, I'll move us on and invite Rob from Reed Cricket Club to present his application.
Sorry. Yeah, so our application for the cricket club is in regards to pavilion upgrades, specifically in the kitchen. So because the club holds quite a number of social events and we hire the pavilion out quite a lot for members of the public in the local community, we just feel like the current kitchen has been as it is for the past sort of 20 odd years, and we just really need to revamp it and get some new fixtures and appliances in there. So in doing this, we're hoping that we can make the pavilion a lot more attractive to members of the community. It will mean it's hired out more, and it can benefit a wider number of people. We've already had an architect that has drawn up some plans for the proposed kitchen and what that would look like to maximise use of the space, because we're not really blessed with space in there and we can't really expand on it. But the way it's laid out at the moment just doesn't really make use of any of the space that we do have. So yeah, I've sort of kept it quite brief, but open to any questions.
Thank you, Robert. Adam and Bryony, again, over to you for any questions. Got any? Robert.
Yeah, hello, it's Councillor Bryony May here. Just interested to know, similar question to the one that Chris asked previously, is how would you manage the situation if we were unable to give you the amount that you wanted today?
So we're quite lucky that within the club we've got quite a wide number of members, and a lot of them are sort of qualified tradesmen. So we'd have very limited costs in terms of fitting the appliances. It's more the physical cost of the appliances themselves that we would obviously need help to acquire.
Thank you. Adam, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Actually, that's pretty much answered one of my questions. I was looking at the amount required for this project of £1,800, thinking that's an awfully low amount needed for a new kitchen. But that makes sense if you've got a number of tradesmen, you're literally looking for the goods. That is quite a high outlay. And having gone to the cricket club, I do recognise the need for some upgrades to the kitchen area as well, to be fair. So thank you for the presentation.
Not a problem, thank you.
Okay, great. There's no further questions from me. So thank you, Robert, very much for your presentation. And that then leads us on to Laura from Resolve, please.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Laura. I'm the CEO at Resolve, and I've been there since March. So this is my first Royston Area Forum, so thank you for having me tonight. So the purpose of Resolve is to meet the needs of local people who need substance misuse treatment, are homeless, or experience poverty. And we help clients move to a manageable, positive lifestyle where they can contribute to the community where they live. We've delivered free drug and alcohol misuse treatment in North Hart since 2018, and that was in response to local demand because there's very little services in North Hart for substance misuse. We also run some other projects in Welwyn Garden City and in Hatfield. This application refers to the service that we deliver from in Letchworth, and we provide high quality psychosocial abstinence-based treatment services, which are unique and flexible and personalised to the individual. So psychosocial treatment, that actually means group therapy, individual key work sessions, and counselling with professional counsellors. We also provide evening sessions for people who work, so they can still receive treatment. And also we run sessions for friends and family members of people who have addiction. And whilst I say that we're abstinence-based, it is a goal rather than a prerequisite of our service. And relapse is common in recovery, and it isn't unusual for clients to revisit that programme. But we believe that clients are more likely to commit to long-term recovery and avoid the relapse if treatment can coexist alongside their lives. That is why we try and personalise our services and make them flexible to fit in with the individual and their life. We ask clients to come to 2 sessions a week, which is much lower than some other services in Hertfordshire, which means that they can retain jobs and continue their other commitments, which can be really essential for mental health. Many of our staff, it's worth saying, have got lived experience, which is important to our values, but it's also important to make sure that the services are relevant to what people want and need and can engage with. And also feedback is really important too, as we build quite close relationships with our clients. They stay with us for 9 months over a year, and they help develop the service and feed into how we run things. This is one client quote. I'm mirroring what Amanda did and using some client quotes here. Attending Resolve literally saved my life. I will be eternally grateful to Resolve. I can look forward to the future with hope and positivity. And we run an annual client survey, and 96% satisfaction rate, and 100% of those clients would recommend us to somebody else. Another client said, the staff and support at Resolve are amazing. The groups have been essential support for me. The advice and lack of judgment useful and refreshing. It's a safe, comfortable place, and I look forward to attending. We've got some impressive outcomes from our work. So 82% of clients reported improvement in physical health and 67% in mental health. 79% report improvement in overall quality of life, and 75% of clients report an improvement in relationships. So in terms of our benefit to community, which one of the questions that you asked me to talk about, we help turn lives around, which means people can either go back to work or keep in work. We can help people improve their health, happiness, self-reliance and responsibility. We can help reduce drug and alcohol related crime and antisocial behaviour, improving local environment, and also friends and family can also get risk support. So it costs around £1,300 to provide treatment for each client per year. And that's why we're seeking funding for our valuable work. We don't receive any statutory funding, and we receive referrals from all sorts of statutory agents and partners, but we don't receive any funding for those referrals. All our services are free to clients, and all our revenues primarily generated through fundraising activity. We don't have a fundraiser, it's me. I write the bids, I turn up to the meetings. It's just little old me, really. So we've asked for a contribution of £1,000 from this area forum, and that's to contribute to our staff costs, our counselling, our clinical supervision, and our offices, which are based in Letchworth. So thank you. I think it's okay. Can I just read one more quote to end with. I'm again mirroring it, Amanda here. My life has been increasingly better since belonging to Resolve. Having struggled chronologically for a large part of my adult life, I lost everything. I was in despair and very sick. Every intervention that was thrown at me over the years from elsewhere was futile and to no avail. Through Resolve's love, understanding, and genuine care, I now have something I haven't seen in many years: hope. I can't put a price on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Bryony and Adam, do you have any questions for Laura?
Not really any questions. That was really interesting, Laura. Sounds like it's very important work, and it also sounds like there's a limited amount of access to this kind of service, particularly that goes, that's long in its length as well, that follow people through and can stay with them until they're at a good point in their lives, or a better point in their lives. So thank you very much.
It's worth noting that it was set up in response to the lack of other services in the area. So that's why it was set up initially. I wasn't around then, but that's my understanding.
Thank you, Laura. Adam.
Thank you, Chair. Laura, I can't remember if it's you that presented in Letchworth or not some few months ago, but we had someone from Resolve come to sort of present, and one of the questions I asked at the time was how many people from Royston are using the service, and you've helpfully again put it in the report here, which is 3. I think everything you do is fantastic. I used to work for a homeless housing association that dealt very much with drug and alcohol abuse, and I think seeing things firsthand and how hard you work is incredible. Really just a comment that obviously the usage in Royston is low, and one of the things you said in Letchworth some months ago was actually transport is an issue. A lot of these people may have lost their license, so on and so forth, which actually makes it quite difficult to get to. It was just a point that we've got someone here from Royston Community Transport on this particular meeting, and I was just wondering if I could maybe get someone to introduce you, because it might be something that you two could maybe help each other with as well, and see if there's some synergy where actually maybe we could put something on to help support people from Royston actually be able to get down to Letchworth for the Resolve Centre. Nothing necessarily for this meeting, but Pete is the gentleman who's on Zoom. It's definitely worth having a chat, because that might be something that you could both help each other out on.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think it's an excellent idea. I mean, the need will be there. It will be that kind of ability to get to Letchworth, which will be limiting people. So I think it's a really good idea. We have people kind of cycle, and it's not easy. So I think it's a great idea. So I'd love to connect in. Thank you, Adam.
That's okay. Thank you.
I've just put my email address, Laura, in the chat.
Thank you, Pete. Claire, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say my team will put the two organisations in contact with one another, so you've got your contact details if you're both happy for us to do that.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. I mean, we also run the it's in the daytime, so it's 2 morning and afternoon, and then there's the evening session as well, but people can choose in lots of ways when they can come, so we try and work with the individual as much as we can.
Thank you. Laura, question from me similar to the ones that have gone before. Would you be able to explain to us a little bit more information about what the impact on Resolve would be if we are unable to give you the full grant tonight, or if you weren't received the grant money you'd applied for tonight?
Yeah, thanks. In a way, it's not dissimilar to Amanda's answer in terms of looking at whether we've got any unrestricted income that we could use. We're looking at cost savings already. So, for example, our acupuncturist retired, and we decided not to replace that person because of funding constraints. So I think, like lots of places, you can't just look at income generation. You've also got to take responsibility for costs as well. And I'm guilty of making everybody put gloves on in the office and not turn the heating up. So we are kind of very mindful of our costs and try not to stop or limit access to services. But it's very difficult. It's when a lot of the costs are fixed costs, like staffing costs, for example. But we are looking at how we save costs. So I think it would be it would probably be yet another squeeze on things around the edges, so that we try to protect that service delivery. We wouldn't want to limit that service to clients, but there might be other things that we have to squeeze out, if you see what I mean, around the edges. My responsibility is the fundraising, and I'm working really hard to bring that money in alongside looking at every penny. It's tough out there. It's tough for everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Yeah, I mean, working in the charity sector myself, been through some of that squeeze process, and I know it's not a pleasant one. Okay, so we've had the 3 presentations. I suppose it's now for myself, Brian, and Adam to decide how to proceed from here. Brian or Adam, do you have any recommendations or proposals that you would like to make in terms of how we deal with quite a tricky situation tonight?
Chair, I've got one suggestion, and that is that the Royston Town Council have its budget been approved on Monday. And currently the draft budget includes a £1,500 grant towards Home Start. Now, what I don't want to do is suggest that that's going to go through, because that's something that has been put in the budget. Obviously, the budget is subject to a vote, but there is a chance that Home Start are going to potentially begin £1,500 from the Royston Town Council. That vote has not gone through yet. So what I don't want to say, actually, that money's definitely going to be there, and therefore maybe squeeze a little off that purely because there's a revenue stream that Amanda doesn't look like she might be aware of as of yet. It was put in at the last finance meeting at Royston Town Council. So there might be, a chance that actually there's some funding there that Home Start aren't aware of yet. But I think the problem is that all 3 of these are very worthy causes. Reed Cricket Club, part of the active strategy at North Herts, is in desperate need for some new services and goods there. Resolve are doing fantastic work, and obviously that is really important work both for people of Royston and wider. Same with Home Start. So that was the only comment I'd make, but I don't really have any suggestions on what to do because that money is not allocated or approved as of yet. So it could not go through.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Claire.
Sorry to go back to this, but I've just had a look. I was just looking through those minutes from March that you've all just agreed, and the 3 after 3 is mentioned because it was discussed at that meeting. And it said that Councillor Hunter noted that the 1,500 for 3 after 3 had not been allocated this year. And then it wasn't allocated. And then it said, following a discussion amongst members, it was agreed that the committee would proceed to decide on grant applications tonight and look for other ways to fund 3 after 3 scheme. So if you're not funding 3 after 3, and that leaves the county councillors' budgets available that might have otherwise gone for 3 after 3, would they be able to use that budget towards some of these grants?
Okay, I think fair enough to go to Fiona, but Adam, I know you'll want to comment on this, but Fiona, maybe you want to reply first to that.
Yes, so I was present at that meeting, and I believe, and I may be preempting what Adam's going to say, but I believe the looking for other funding for 3 after 3 was regarding whether the town council would put in, and you're perfectly right, Claire's perfectly right about what she says about Home Start, because I'm actually holding some funding, quite a lot of funds at the moment, or funding applications awaiting that decision on free after three, which we haven't had. And I have chased that because we need to know, because we need to allocate by some of the applications by February, others by March. So that decision is urgently needed. But I believe that the actual comment about looking for ways of other funding was if the town council and maybe other organisations could put in to free after three to take some of the pressure off the district council and the county councillors' budget. So that decision hasn't yet made. So I think that stands open until we get a decision, and that also applied as far as the area committee was concerned, as it was then. So the decision wasn't made until we knew whether there would be any way of making up that funding.
Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, that is largely how I remember it as well. I'll go to Adam, but then again, I suspect Steve's also wanted to jump in on the same topic.
Thank you, Chris. Chair. I think from memory of the meeting, yes, we discussed finding alternative funding streams, such as the town council. The reason why there was an 800 odd budget that was brought forward, where normally we have a £1,500 budget brought forward, is to pay for that free after three each year. So we'd normally keep £1,500 back so that the next year it's paid for. Now that was brought forward 2 years ago, so this year was paid for, and Councillor Tony Hunter did bring that to our attention, but we had two particular grants on the night which took us over the £1,500 we had available. So I actually proposed that both the grants that came through went through, and we'd have to try and find the money this year to get the shortfall, or find some extra money from elsewhere to cover the £750 odd shortfall. Clearly, it's not ring fenced at this moment in time, however, which kind of leaves us in a bit of a predicament, because we're assuming there's some money for free after three, but it's not budgeted for according to this paper, and it sounds like that decision's been made to remove it. So do we keep some money back for that, or do we continue with the three bids? Just adds a little bit of complexity to this discussion already. So I would assume that we should assume that it's not budgeted for based on what we've heard from Claire, and therefore not look at trying to put free after three into this discussion, because it does complicate it, and it sounds like we don't have the budget for it anyway.
Okay, thanks, Adam. I'm seeing, I think, Bryony nodding to that. That makes sense. Steve, do you want to jump in?
Well, I have to say I've always been confused about which year we were paying for it in the free after three. But from what I can see, I certainly made a payment last year, so I think, well, I don't know which year we're talking about paying for, but clearly it's been delivered this year, so I don't know who paid for it, but it's happened. My understanding was that there was a review that had resulted in a significant change, and there was discussions about how that would be funded. And on that basis, I have to say that I think it is unlikely to continue in its previous form, was what I heard. I think that there is, I think my position is probably that in the absence of any clarity about this, I'm going to assume that the money can be spent on other worthwhile projects. And if we need to do something about that later in the year, then we'll worry about that later in the year. There will, after all, be another budget from May, so far as the county council is concerned. Although, given I understand their county budgets are likely to be significantly reduced, and there's a bunch more rules, whether or not it's feasible to make anyway at the same level of contribution, I think remains to be seen. So I'm not sure that moves us forward a lot, because I think what we're all saying is we really don't know what's happening about this, and I think the question is what we're going to do in the interim while we don't know what's happening. And Fiona, I think, has taken the view that she will retain all the money that might be required. I've retained some of it, and should it transpire that I hadn't retained enough, then we'll worry about that problem later. And it sounds like the area committee is essentially in a similar position. So I'm not sure it's very helpful, but that's kind of my summary of where we appear to be.
Thank you, Steve. I found that helpful. Fiona, did you want to add to that?
Yes, it is helpful. And my understanding was certainly as far as the area committee, now forum, and the locality budgets are concerned, we pay in advance. So the applications always come in sort of for in the year before, but for the next year. That I think we had that clarified, and that is in some minutes somewhere. But I very much hope that Steve is right, and maybe we obviously can use some of what we've got now to pay for some of the other grants which are just sitting there at the moment. But it would be nice to have clarification.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think clarification seems pretty essential at this point. But as regards to this evening, I think personally I'm minded to go down Adam's route of putting to one side the question that seems to be unsolvable currently, which then leaves us with the question of making grants, or what to do about the grants that have been applied for tonight's budget. I don't know whether this is a particularly unfair question, particularly as one of our applicants has now left the meeting, I believe. Obviously, if we choose not to make the funding available to one of the groups that's come forward tonight, there is the opportunity for them, I believe, Claire, to return at a future date, but it will be a deferral of quite a few months. I don't want to put anyone unfairly on the spot, but it could be a valuable piece of information to know how time urgent the funding that's been applied for tonight is with regards to the two remaining organisations that are in the room. If the other councillors agree that that would be useful in helping make a decision. Adam, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to make a proposal here. We've got a £319 shortfall on the budget versus what we've got to put grants for. I think that, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but Councillor May and yourself also agree by the look of it, these are worthwhile projects. So what I would propose to do is to grant money to all three. We've got to find a £319 we've got to find £319. So on the basis that I know that £1,500 has been granted to Home Start, I would propose that we shave off £200 from that grant and £110 from the other two, just so that all three projects can get money. And the only reason, Amanda, I'm picking unfairly on you on my proposal is purely because I know that money's not expected for you, and it's been put into the budget, so there is an additional source of funding. So just thought that way all three organisations would get a good chunk of what they're after, not quite everything. But I think it's better to shave a little off all three on that basis than decline one when I think they're all fairly time sensitive. I think Amanda and Laura have both said that obviously they would need to cut services if they didn't get the money. Likewise, the cricket club need to have it in by April. Otherwise, they're not going to see the rewards of that until next summer if they're going to have to do it after the summer. So that would be my proposal, to shave I can't even remember what I said now.
200.
Actually, 200 seems a bit unfair as well. Say 150 and then split the difference between the other two. So £70 off the others and 150 off Home Start on that basis would be my proposal.
Okay, Adam, thank you for your proposal. Bryony, I'm guessing you probably want to come in a second, but Claire, could you just confirm the sums and the maths of all of that with Adam's proposal? Sorry if that's, again, a bit unfair putting you on the spot, but
that's all right. I'll get my calculator up. Hang on. So it's 319 we're trying to find, isn't it? And we've got 150 from Home Start plus, did you say £75?
I think
Yeah,
that was
sorry,
Adam.
my maths probably wasn't very good there myself. So it was 300.
That's 300. Yeah, that's 300.
And then
so we have a further £19 to find somewhere along the line. Okay. So, Bryony, do you have any thoughts that you want to add in at this stage?
Yeah, so, I think I've understood the situation. Can I ask Adam a question? How confident are you of the funding for Home Start from the town council? Because obviously I'm not party to that at all.
sure. So it was proposed by Councillor Brown of the Lib Dems. I think it was seconded by me at the Finance Committee to include that funding. Realistically, everyone was quite happy with it. We had a unanimous vote at Finance Committee. So I don't see any particular issues with it continuing. And actually, it was mentioned at Finance what a great job Home Start do. So I have no doubt that they are going to get funding. I'm 95% confident it will be the 1,500 that's in the draft budget. And the draft budget is on the town council website, should anyone want to have a look at it. But obviously it's not guaranteed. So that's when I say 95% positive. It is subject to a vote. So I can't obviously say what everyone is going to vote on the night, but I don't foresee it not going through.
Thank you for that. Fair enough. Because the only other way I can think of resolving this fairly is to do it on a percentage basis. So look at the amounts that have been requested and look at the amount that we have and divide it up on the basis of that, so that each organisation gets the percentage of the same percentage of what they applied for. That's another way of resolving it. But if there's a really good chance that Home Start will overall receive the money that they need, then I'd be comfortable with that as well.
Okay, thanks, Bryony. I suspect I agree with your point, I think, about the percentages, but I suspect that that's possibly putting an unfair burden on anyone's calculator skills at this time of the evening to work out what the sums of that would be. Fiona, did you want to come in?
Yes, because I'm also sitting on an application awaiting a decision pending other decisions. So what are we talking about? That's for Home Start, that particular one. So what are we talking about the shortfall being specifically at the moment for Home Start as it stands with Adam's proposal?
I think Adam's proposal was to reduce the grant to Home Start by £150.
Because I'm pretty sure that I could give them at least that. I'm, as I say, I'm just pending, waiting other decisions. But I was always intending to give something. It just was how much. So if it causes you a big issue, I could practically guarantee that if it would help with the other decisions.
Right.
I think
because that's just my decision. It's gone through all the legal process. It's literally my decision on that. So
that would be helpful.
If that helps you
fantastic.
at all.
Okay. So just sorry, Claire, did you came on the mic? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say I've worked out that to use up the spare £19, we'd have to take £85 from the other two rather than 75. That brings us under budget slightly.
Okay, thanks, Claire. So, right, where we are at the moment then, as I can
Shall I repeat the proposal with those numbers?
Just yeah, you go ahead, Adam.
So I propose to reduce the grant requested by £150 by Home Start on the basis that look like we've got alternative funding sorted, and the remaining two items by £84.50 to bring it to zero then.
Okay, So if you'd like to make, if you're making that as a proposal, presumably do we need a seconder for that at this stage? We will. I will go ahead and second that then. It seems it's a tricky situation, but it feels like perhaps it's as fair as we can get it at the moment this evening. Oh, Steve.
I was just going to observe that if the others want to ask me for the £85, I'm sure I can find that. So I'm sure that Fiona and I have a bit more flexibility about these things, but I'm sure we can make up those shortfalls.
Oh, fantastic, Steve.
I think, Steve, yeah, that's very helpful to know. That'll,
Happy news out everywhere then.
yeah. That'll speed us on our way. Okay, well, that's the motion. Adam's motion seconded. So we move to a vote. Predictable outcomes, hopefully. So we'll raise our hands in favour of Adam's motion. Spend the money as proposed. There we go. That's all three voting in favour. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Laura and Amanda, for your presentations, for all the work that you're doing, and for your patience as we try to work that out. Hopefully, between all the various routes for money we've discussed there, you'll get the funding that you need to carry on the fantastic work that you do. Thank you very much. You're obviously welcome to stay in the meeting, but also you are also welcome to go.
Can I be excused? I'm actually got another meeting that I need to dash out to now.
No.
So, but thank you so much, and thank you, Fiona, as well. That's fantastic news. So I shall pass that on to my colleagues, and they will be thrilled as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, that brings us on to agenda item 5, which is now loading very slowly. Right. So the grants and community updates. Claire, are you presenting on that?
Yes. Need to find that document though. Hold on. Still in the March folder.
Oh, Matt, in the meantime, would you like to reappear?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm just announcing that I'm rejoining. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Right. Okay, the district-wide updates. It's been a busy time for the community partnerships team. We had a bit of a reshuffle of the team in October, so that some of the officers cover different areas, but that doesn't affect Royston. The Community Investment Fund has now closed. There was an oversubscription of about 3 times the amount of funds available. So the Community Investment Fund has got a budget of 100 grand from council reserves, and we had over 300 grand's worth of applications. There's a meeting next week, a grant panel meeting next week to look at the grants that went forward, and we had to implement a very stringent scoring system to find, because a lot of the grant, that there was some very, very good applications, but what we did was scored them to the ones that we felt that scored the highest in providing an investment to the community. So it was a very difficult job to do, and the grant panel is next week for those grants. We've got the Holocaust Memorial Day event is on Friday the 26th of January at 1 o'clock. That will be on the council's YouTube channel if anybody wants to watch it live, or you can come along to the council offices, and the event will be held in the council chamber. And the nominations for the North Herts Heroes Volunteer Awards closed on Sunday, and we have the judging panel this Friday, and those will be announced and celebrated at the Chair Civic event on the 1st of March. we worked in November with the British Legion and the Letchworth Bid to put on the North Herts Remembrance Day event, and are still obviously coordinating all the various district-wide networking groups for youth action, food provision, arts and culture, and the Green and Growing group. There's also a health and wellbeing group. We continue to do all the councillors' surgeries in Hitchin, Letchworth, Baldock and Royston. Your one's this Saturday coming, isn't it? And still sharing and disseminating all the information on social media and keeping our mailing lists up to date. The things that are specific to the Royston and district area, Becca's attended the Kershaw parish meeting and plans on attending more parish council meetings in the coming months. She's been liaising with Royston Leisure Centre and other partners about health and with the health and wellbeing networking team. And she's been to several events in Royston over the few months, including the fire station Christmas event, which she's put, all of which are a testament to the Royston community.
Great. Thank you, Claire. That sounds like you are incredibly busy.
We are.
Before I go over to my colleagues for questions, just for the notes, Claire, I've just seen, by the way, on my phone, that I do in fact have apologies from Councillor Kathy Browntrot.
Right.
So,
I'll add her in on the notes. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Adam, looks like Adam's got a question.
Thanks for the update, Claire. Really interested to see what's going on. I was just wondering how much you get involved in the Remembrance Day event at Letchworth, and this is as Councillor Fiona Hill will know, this is one of my bugbears that Royston seems to get left out. So the Royston Town Council will donate money or grant money to the Royal British Legion, but they run it solely, and there's an incredible expense that Royston, I say Royston at wide have, because the Royston Town Council basically need to put loads of money into to the Royal British Legion so we can get the road closed, because we need private companies to come in and shut the roads. I'm under the impression that North Herts were able to do it in Letchworth. I was just wondering if there's any way that this could maybe be, circulated on a yearly basis so other parts of the district are able to benefit from the council money in that regard.
We don't put any money into it. We work alongside the British Legion in Letchworth, and it was decided by the leader, I think, to make the Letchworth event the North Herts event. And we're very fortunate that the bid manager in Letchworth is Section 8 trained in road management. So he helps do all the traffic management alongside officers from my team. So we're also trained in traffic management, and we've each got a Lantra card, but that means we can assist with road closures but not design and implement them or put notices out.
Right, so it's still led by the British Legion, though. The road closure is not led by the council.
No.
Okay.
Well, that's the bid do that, but
by the bid.
Yeah. But we are kind of officially the event organizer in terms of the public liability and stuff. It's a council event, but it's the North Herts event. But there's obviously events going on across the district in all the villages in Hitchin, in Baldock and Royston. So we can't be at all of them.
No, that's why I just wondered whether it could maybe rotate to help share some certain load, because I know it is getting more and more expensive. I think Councillor Fiona Hill wanted to come in. Sorry, Chair.
And by all means, go ahead, Fiona.
Thank you. For clarification, it isn't a British Legion event. They are civic events. So it's not the British Legion that organises it. The chairman of the British Legion just happens to do it as a town council volunteer. So that the Remembrance Sunday and the Remembrance Day, they are the they are both civic events. So therefore the town council is responsible, because we have a town council in Royston, whereas in Letchworth we don't. So they're not British Legion events. It's,
No, I'm sorry, Fiona.
that's how it
I
is.
always
So
get my words mixed up with
yeah,
that one, don't I?
yeah.
But no, it's okay. So it's a Royston Town Council
It's a
event.
town
yeah.
council event, and it just happens to be the chairman arranges it on behalf of, but he does it not on behalf of the Royal British Legion. He does it on behalf of the town council as a volunteer. So that is why it is. And obviously previously the police used to do the road closures.
Yeah.
So there was no cost to anybody. Now, in order to get the road closure, there has to be a traffic management organisation or staff, as Claire's alluded to, that are trained up to do that. So that's why
we did have some of the town council come on the same course that I attended.
Yes, I believe that's true.
So
I know
they've
that's
got the
true.
same qualification, so that they can do that part of it to save them money on.
Yeah,
I think the issue in Royston is it's the fact that it's the main road and you've got lots of junctions coming off it. So it's not just a case of closing the one road; it's a case of closing about 4 or 5 down. I think
we've got
it's the A10. It's the A10, and it's major roads, and that's what causes the additional expense on that.
Thank you, everyone. Any more questions for Claire on that presentation? Looks like we're ready to move on to the next agenda item. So that then brings us on to tonight's discussion, which is on transport, and we have presentations from Royston and District Community Transport and from Hearts Links. So without further ado, I will invite Pete, if you want to give your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I sent some slides over, so if anybody's able to share them, that would be great. If not, I can share my screen. Is Laura on the call?
I am, yes. I'm just about to get it up for you. So
thank you.
1 second, sorry.
Thanks, Laura.
Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yeah, I can see it. Can everybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I'll just whiz through these quickly and then obviously give you a chance to ask any questions. But I just thought it'd be worth a slide on the history of Royston and District Transport. You may not be aware, but it started way back in 1993 by Dr. John Hedges from Royston Health Centre to support local health appointments. So originally it was just intended to get patients to the surgery because a lot of them struggled with transport, whether it's public or otherwise. A year later, it moved to Royston Hospital, and we became a registered charity with a board of trustees. From there, it expanded in subsequent years to include Cambridgeshire and all surrounding villages, as well as North Herts. And we now employ 4 part-time staff, a manager, 2 office admin clerks, and a part-time minibus driver. So that's a little bit of history. If you could move on, Laura, to the next slide, please. A little bit about our operation. We are manned totally, apart from that minibus driver, by volunteers. I myself have been a volunteer driver for a couple of years with Royston Transport. So all of our drivers give up their valuable time to offer the service to the local community. We do operate a minibus and what we call a WAV, which is a wheelchair assisted vehicle for those people who need it. So this is wheelchairs, etc., or particularly mobility issues. But otherwise, every journey is by a volunteer driver in their own car. And most of our clients are there because of age, frailty, or disability. We have over 1,300 passengers on our database, obviously not all active, but we retain all their details, and that's across Royston and surrounding villages. And we have about 50 volunteer drivers, as I say, giving up their valuable time. Last year, that was up to March 23, we completed over 6,000 journeys, travelling over 100,000 miles, with about 80% of those journeys being medical. Many of them to the Lister and Addenbrooks, as you might expect, with the remainder being social to clubs, etc. Okay, Laura. In terms of funding, we currently we get a mileage income. We charge 60p a mile, of which 50p goes to the driver to cover their costs, and 10p goes to Royston and District Transport to cover our overheads. We do have grant funding. So Herts and Cambridgeshire County Councils give us a grant each year, and then we also apply for ad hoc applications, including North Herts in the past as well, which we're very grateful for, and also private organisations. So, for example, last year, the Co-op gave us £1,300 from their community grant scheme. So we're always looking for private funding as well as public. And we also run a very successful lottery, what we call a supporters lottery, where people pay £10 a year or £12 a year, £1 a month, and go into a monthly draw. And that gives us some decent income as well. Okay, Laura? And this seems to be a theme of the evening, which is client feedback. I just thought I'd share with you some recent quotes that we get from our wonderful clients. I won't read them out, but you can see them there on the screen. They're always very grateful and either give direct feedback to the driver or often call the office and just say how grateful they are for the service. And there's some pictures there for you of our two vehicles, the minibus, the wheelchair adapted vehicle, and lovely Pat, one of our volunteer drivers. So that's us in a nutshell. So happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Pete.
No problem.
Do we have any questions from my colleagues? Matt.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Hi, Pete.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. That was really interesting. I just wanted to ask about so I understand that you're based at the Royston Hospital, is that?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how suitable is that as a kind of base for you?
Well, it's for free, Matt. That's the first thing to say. So very suitable.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know the hospital at all or not?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an old building, so we do have some offices. It's certainly fine for what we need. We have an office that can seat sort of 4 in the main office, and then the manager has an office as well. We have a small kitchen in there, so it's very suitable, and obviously. Yeah, we hope to continue to have that as a location. There's a little bit of uncertainty about that, obviously, but yeah, it certainly meets our needs. And we're able to park the 2 vehicles there as well, Matt, which is extremely useful for us.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Pete. Adam.
Thanks, Pete. Brilliant presentation. There was a couple of things there I didn't know about Royston District Transport, community transport. So that was really interesting to hear how it was actually set up. I always thought it was a fairly new thing, hadn't realised just how long, how far back it goes. So no, brilliant that it's been going for so long.
Yeah.
Sorry, you might have guessed from some earlier points I made, I'm also a town councillor. So this is sort of related a little bit more to town. But the town council runs various events for the elderly, like Silver Sunday. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's sort of a part where we can get more elderly residents in Royston to go to the cinema, watch a sort of old-fashioned film, have all films, and then have teas, cakes, and crumpets, etc. Sort of at the town hall. I think I spoke last year and was going to ask if you were able to support. But do you know if you happen to support any events like that? With Royston Town Council.
I'd need to check, Adam. I'm sure we do. I mean, we certainly support things like the Thriplow Daffodil Festival, where we've taken residents of Royston out to that event. But I'm happy to take an action to go and check with the office and see what we have supported.
That would be brilliant. The reason why I'm asking is I think, someone like an organisation like yourselves could really sort of, help get more people out and about, and particularly if you're doing the majority of your trips for medical appointments, it seems like, I'm assuming that many of these people aren't particularly mobile. So actually, the the closer we work together, the better.
Correct. Yeah, and obviously we've got the minibus as well, so that enables us to take a larger group of people. So let me take an action, Adam, and we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, Bryony, I think you were next.
Yes, thanks, Pete. That was really interesting, and just a really big thank you for all that you've been doing as an organisation over the years, because it's makes an amazing difference to people. I just wondered, you said you've got around 50 volunteers involved. Do you find that with the combination of your staff and your volunteers that you're able to meet the need, or do you think that there's a greater need than out there? And sometimes
I think we're keeping up with it. Obviously, there's certain days where we're not able to provide a service because we just haven't got availability, but that's quite rare, to be honest. It depends on the notice as well, because typically a volunteer driver would say I can do certain days of the week, or tend to be retired people, but then they're always busy doing other things as well. So yeah, I would say in answer to your question, Bryony, we would meet most of the needs, but if it's a short notice request, then we sometimes have to say no.
And just a sort of follow-up question: do the volunteers? Do you have volunteers that have volunteered for many years, or do you have quite a high turnover in it, or recruit new ones on a regular basis?
We seem to have a core of drivers that have been doing this for a number of years. And then, a bit like using myself as an example, recently retired, I've come on as a relatively new driver. So it's a bit of a mixture, to be honest. We have some guys who do journeys every day, who've been retired for quite a while, and they, it's as much sort of an occupation for them as it is the service. They get so much value out of it. And they enjoy doing it. They're happy to do this on a daily basis. And then there's others who can only do it on on an ad hoc basis.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Pete. Again, Matt, next new hand for you.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask, is there anything that you're looking for us to help with, or that you think we as district councillors could support with? I'm thinking kind of awareness raising, signposting is kind of obvious, but is there anything specific that you?
I mean, any promotion you can help with, Matt. Adam and Bryony will know we've got banners now around the town, which is there to help with recruitment. So we can always do with more drivers. We've got some material on our website. We've certainly got some flyers that we use at events in Royston, etc. So if there's any opportunity you can think of to help with that, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. A couple of questions for me. One's a very straightforward one. Are you guys members of the Community Transport Association?
Yes, we are. Yeah, and Simone, our manager, attends actually the meetings, so she does share learnings with other transport managers.
Great. And just a sort of slightly nerdy transport question. How does it actually work in terms of the like full trip that your users make? Because obviously they'll want to go a place and then make a return journey. And typically under sort of commercial circumstances, you're trying to achieve other trips in the meantime. But do your volunteers, do they wait, or how does that work?
So the way we work it, Chris, is on medical appointments, we say we'll wait up to 2 hours. Any more than 2 hours, then we usually do 2 trips. We'll go away and come back again. But we don't charge waiting time. So it's purely mileage there and back. So from that point of view, it's obviously much, much cheaper than a taxi service would be. The other thing I would add is that, we do help with mobility. So I took a lady to Addenbrooke's this morning who needed a wheelchair when we got there. So, I took her to the clinic, which was on the 3rd floor and so on. So it's not just about driving somebody and dropping them off. Our drivers will always help them, get into the hospital or the surgery if need be.
Well, that's a pretty incredible service you're providing then.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pete. Brian, is that a new hand or a legacy hand? Looks like it's
Definitely a legacy hand and inexperience with using Zoom, Chris.
okay. Right. Well, thanks, Pete. That's been really, really interesting. And
Okay.
yeah, I think we'll all definitely be keen to do what we can to help support you guys and see if we can recruit you maybe some more volunteers.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you. Right. And then our other presentation is from Alice from Hearts Links. Alice, over to you.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I think, Laura, you've got my slides as well. Will you be able to share them for me, please?
Absolutely. Just give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Let me know if you're able to see that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
And I'll just... Ooh. Lovely, whenever you're ready.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to present this evening. My name is Alice Misler and I am the DRT and Community Transport Team Leader at Hertfordshire County Council within the Integrated Transport Unit. The main focus of this presentation is just to give a fairly brief overview of what Hearts Links is, how it works and what we've achieved so far, with a specific focus on trends in North Hertfordshire within the Royston area. And I'm happy to take any questions at the end as well. Next slide, please. Sorry, has it moved on? It's not moved on my screen.
I've got
demand.
Demand. Oh, 1 minute. I'll stop sharing and I'll restart if that's okay. So I'm not sure what's happened there.
Brilliant, thank you. So for those who may not have heard of demand responsive transport, or DRT as we call it, DRT is essentially a bookable shared public bus service that provides transport to passengers who can choose both their travel times and their travel locations. So it really puts the passenger in control of where they're going. There are a variety of DRT types. So most of you probably would have heard of the older DRT models, such as ring and ride services. So you've got dial-a-rides style services, which are the more traditional DRT models. However, there's been a transition now towards the more digital DRT services, such as Hearts Links, and there's lots of others that have been launched within the UK recently. And these typically utilize a DRT technology software, such as the one that we use. And I'll explain that a little bit further on the next slide. But it is key to note that DRT services are mostly implemented in rural areas where existing public transport services are limited. And essentially, DRT aims to traditionally complement existing transport models rather than compete with. And this helps passengers access transport hubs such as railway stations and bus stations, where they can then continue their journey on existing public transport. Next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So Hearts Links, you can see the vehicle here on the slide, was launched after a successful bid to the Department for Transport for their Rural Mobility Fund back in September 2021. The service was launched with aims to increase access for residents to education, employment, healthcare and leisure activities, as well as reduce social isolation in rural areas. It's available for all members of the public to use to travel within the operating zone. All of our fares are currently capped at £2 per single journey, and that's in line with the government's bus fare cap grant. Concessionary pass holders are eligible for free travel as well, and saver cards are 50% off travel for those who have purchased a saver card. The operating zone in North and East Hertfordshire was chosen primarily based around Buntingford and the surrounding villages. And this was chosen because the majority of the rural areas had either limited or no access to existing public transport. In fact, there was a population of roughly 4,000 residents who had no access to a normal bus route whatsoever. So obviously they had high dependence on private car usage, or found themselves having to ask for help from family or friends, or paying for taxis in order to access education, shopping, and leisure activities, and healthcare as well. The initial operating zone that we launched with was roughly about 150 square miles, so it's a big zone. And this was essentially defined into two parts. So you've got 6 key towns that surround the operating zone, and we call these the key hub towns. So this is Royston, Baldock, Hitchin, Letchworth, Stevenage, and Bishop Stortford. And then all of the villages that fit in the middle, we refer to as a free floating zone. That is DRT jargon, but essentially it just means that passengers can travel wherever they like within this free floating zone, from HeartsLink's pickup points that we have over 350 of these within this area. And then they can travel to the towns or from the towns, but they can't travel within the 2 points within one town. So if you take Royston as an example, you couldn't travel within 2 points within Royston. You could travel from Royston into the free floating area, or vice versa. And the reason for this is essentially because within the existing towns, there is sufficient fixed transport services, normal bus services in place. And we want the HeartsLink service to bring residents in the rural areas into those towns where they can continue their journeys on existing public transport. We've been operating in North and East Herts now for 2 years, or just over. And we recently surpassed our major milestone of 50,000 completed passenger trips. And this was done on 4 minibuses, all 16 seaters, as you can see there. And this is a really fantastic achievement for the service. And we've done even better now. We've done 56,500 trips. So we're growing again quite rapidly, which is great. Very briefly, I'll explain how the booking and the technology system works. So we work with a technology provider called Pada Mobility, and essentially they provide us with the booking platforms, which is a HeartsLink's booking app, a booking website, and a back office management system. And this is where we operate and manage the bookings and the shifts. And we also have a designated call centre for HeartsLinks, which we operate within Hertfordshire County Council. And this is fundamental for passengers who don't have access to a smartphone or a computer, and we can ensure that we're accessible for everybody. Something that's really important for us. The software that we use then groups passengers together who are heading in a similar direction at a similar time. This is to ensure that we are best utilising our fleet and making sure we're being as efficient as possible. The number of passengers that could share any one ride really depends on the demand of bookings that we have. So there could be 1 person on board, or there could be 16. It really does differ every hour of every day. Keeps it exciting. And the key thing really about HeartsLinks is that it doesn't follow a fixed timetable. It doesn't follow any fixed routes. It's really a flexible service that only travels when bookings are made. Passengers do need to book in advance, but this could be a minimum of 3 minutes time. So you could book, if you wanted a journey for right this very second, you could book for 3 minutes in advance within our operating times, or for up to 30 days ahead. So you can book far in advance. And again, this just depends on the availability of other pre-booked journeys that have been placed already. We operate between 7 and 7, Monday to Saturday, and 10 till 4 on Sundays and bank holidays. So we are a 7-day-a-week service. We typically find that about 85% of our passengers book via the app. And this is great because passengers can then track their vehicles in real time before they're picked up, and they can see real-time updates as well, which is, if any traffic delays have incurred or any other issues, the passengers are notified straight away. We have about 10% of our bookings that are made by the booking website, and this essentially mirrors the HeartsLinks booking app, just in a different format. And about 5% of passengers book by the phone. But overall, the service has been really popular. We've had a fantastic feedback rating. We've got 4.91 out of 5 stars, our average rating, so we're happy with that. And obviously, there is always room for improvement, but that's pretty high up in the terms of DRT. And we have roughly between 400 and 500 new users every month, which again just shows the great growth we've been having so far. If you could move on to the next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So this slide shows the growth in patronage on the HeartsLink service so far. And as you can see, it's had a fairly consistent growth since it commenced back in September 2021. We had a small dip last summer, and this was due to vehicle issues, but we're pleased to see that the numbers are getting back on track. And actually, we're now higher than ever with our patronage. I will kind of add a note in here that the December figure is very, very high, but that's because we're now operating with 7 vehicles rather than 4. And we're hoping that we'll maintain this 4,000 as a minimum level moving forward now. If you could move on to the next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. And so here you can see the breakdown in trends of journey type. So on the left, you can see passenger trips. This is broken down by time of day. You'll see a small section at the top. That's because we also have an evening service that runs on a Friday and a Saturday night. So that's why they're slightly outside of the 7 till 7 hours there. But we traditionally thought we'd kind of fit in with that normal peak trend of commuter hours. But actually, we also have that high peak around the lunchtime as well, which is great. And we only have a couple of hours where we're not having high capacity use of the service. So overall, there's a fairly even spread throughout the day. And it just kind of reflects that as it's such a flexible service with demand responsive transport, people really are using it for multiple different reasons and at different times of the day just to fit in with their own lifestyles, which is great. And on the right, you can see the breakdown of travel per weekday. So Saturday is actually our most popular day, closely followed by Friday, which is great. We've got a lot of families using the service on Saturday to get around with their children. And then we have a fairly consistent spread of travel for the other weekdays. And Sunday, we have reduced hours. So naturally, we'll have reduced patronage as well. Next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So this really depicts the trends of travel that we have on the HeartsLink service. I've had to remove quite a lot of lines off of this because otherwise it just looks like a diamond blob of lines on the screen. So where you see the circles here, it just kind of shows the hotspots that people are traveling to. And it is a clear trend of people traveling from the key towns into the rural areas and vice versa, which is great to see. On the next couple of slides, I've broken that down into the areas that we're talking about here, which is Royston. So if you could move on to the next slide, please, Laura. Perfect, thank you. So here you can see where people are travelling to and from, coming in or out of Royston. So it's fairly widespread, going, with the furthest distance going into Bishop Stortford. And as in isolation, we've had 5,670 pickups from Royston. We do have a number of stops within the town, and 8,230 drop-offs within Royston. So it's been a very popular stop so far. Next slide, please. And again, here you can see, again, the travel trends going in and out of Barley. So again, it's very similar spread, again, with the furthest distance here, probably going to Stevenage and Hitchin. And slightly lower pickups and drop-offs, but that's to be expected as it's smaller than Royston. And I think I've got one more on the next slide, please, Laura, which is Therfield. So this is fairly popular as a pickup and drop-off location, and has a bit more of a further spread of travel trends as well. Next slide, please. So what we've been doing this year is we've been expanding the HeartsLink service thanks to additional funding from the DfT's Bus Service Improvement Plan. So part of this funding was to support an evening service, which, as I've mentioned, operates every Friday and every Saturday. So this really helps to boost nighttime economies and also helps to serve residents who don't typically work the 9 to 5 standard hours and who may need to access appointments or visit friends and family outside of their working hours. So this has been very successful so far as an additional service. All of our vehicles operate in the evening service, and there's no limitations outside of the usual operating zone that we have. And what we have found is that there is a higher number of people being grouped together on the evening services. And that's maybe because people are traveling with friends or just because people are typically going to a similar location. And it is a shorter period of time that we're operating for. But it is great because we are really seeing the true nature of DRT coming through with lots of different people traveling on the same vehicle, removing single occupancy car usage. And it has been a really popular addition to the service. Next slide, please. My final slide here just shows the second expansion that we launched actually on the 4th of December. So it's one of our newer expansions. And you can see the green area here is the outline of the existing HeartsLink zone that we had with the centre of Buntingford. And this yellow zone here shows our expansion zone that we've just launched. So in addition to be able to travel to the 6 key towns I mentioned before, passengers can now also travel into Hertford and Ware as well, which is great for residents within this rural area in the middle of the towns, being able to access more points as well. There's no limitations again on travelling between the 2 zones. It's fully open, so you can travel anywhere within these 2 zones. And we have increased our fleet total to 7 vehicles. So we are now able to keep up with the demand that we're getting. There is still times where we have more demand than we have vehicles. That's a positive thing in the sense that people want to use the service, and we are consistently monitoring and reviewing the data to see how we can help expand even further and meet the demand that we have. But again, this was a really positive expansion, and we had a lot of requests from residents to expand into Hertford and Ware. It's slightly too soon for us to be looking at the patronage figures and what the trends are, because it's only been operating for a month. But we'll be happy to share data on that once we've been operating for a bit longer. I think my final slide is, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alice. That was fantastic. Really, really interesting. I've definitely got a couple of questions. I will also go over to my colleagues in a second, but I'll use Chair's prerogative to jump in with my questions to start with. Firstly, there's a question about funding. It's something that's seen quite often with demand responsive transport, as they get set up with one-off pots of government funding and then can disappear when the one-off pot of government funding stops. And you obviously mentioned a couple of projects. It was really great to see the expansion and the nighttime service, but that's both, you mentioned, funded with BSIP funding, which is one-off funding, as I understand it. So I'd be interested to hear about, are you expecting these to get onto a sort of commercially viable basis that they'll be able to continue on under their own steam, or is it only really going to exist for the duration of that funding?
Yeah, thanks. That's a fantastic question, and one that we're thinking about every day, is how do we keep this service going post-funding? So the Rural Mobility Fund that was used to implement the service at the beginning was there for 4 years worth of operations. So we've got another year and a half essentially until we have to, we have to think about this beforehand, obviously, but a year and a half left before the decision really needs to be made. What we don't expect it to be commercially viable. Demand responsive transport is incredibly expensive to operate because of the intricate nature of the service. And if it was commercially viable, then there'd be an existing bus service in there. So we serve a community value as well as looking at the more financial side of things as well. So we always have to bear in mind you can't directly compare a normal bus service with a DRT service, and it is a more expensive service to run. However, the key focus for us is we know there's going to be a gap to fill, but how can we reduce that gap? So we're already working on different strategies to try and bring that gap down for funding, such as we're doing a couple of home to school routes for children's services to help them, but also bring in extra revenue for us. Looking at Section 106 developer contributions to help with additional funding that way. And increasing patronage is the best form of revenue that we can bring in for the service. The more people that use it, the longer the service is going to be there. So whilst it's great to see our positive growth with patronage, we need that to continue even further so that we can keep this service here in the long term. Again, with the BSIP funded services, they're in there for 3 years. So there is some overlap. But obviously there is a risk that if we didn't have any way of keeping this service going forward after the rural mobility funding runs out, we'll have an expansion zone without the original zone, which could leave us in a bit of a tricky situation. So the team and I are busy working on different strategies to try and really bring that gap down.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alice. You don't need to answer this now, but I'd actually be really interested for a follow-up email. I forget the technical transport term for it, but I'd be really interested to know whether you're trying to tap into any of those NHS journeys that were actually mentioned about with the community transport scheme as well, because I know that's also another potential route for bringing in some additional funding sometimes for these sort of schemes. But my actual second question was hopefully a shorter one, was just around whether you have any details or information about what the journey purposes are of your customers. Particularly interested actually whether you have any evidence of people travelling using your service to travel out from towns to access green space. Is that something that you have any data on?
So we don't ask people what is their purpose for travelling. For data protection reasons, we try to keep information that we collate from users as a minimum, just on the bare necessities. But what we do on a 6-monthly basis is send out a passenger survey. And this goes out to all residents in the operating zones. We've got another Hearts Links that just launched in Dacorum as well. So be interesting to compare both services later on down the line. But essentially in those surveys, we do ask, what's your reason for travel? And, you know, questions that we wouldn't be able to ask just from people signing up and using the service. We've got one that's due to go out in February. That will go out for 6 weeks, and then that will be able to give us a really good indicator of why people are using it, and also looking at, are people making that transition from single occupancy car usage onto public transport, which is that modal shift that we're really trying to achieve with the Hearts Link service. So we'd be happy to share that information once this newest survey has gone out. I think because they're done on a 6-monthly basis, it's probably more useful to see the most recent feedback. So I'm happy to keep in touch and share that information when that comes back in.
Thanks, Alice. Yeah, I'd definitely be really interested to see that. Matt, you had your hand up, but it's gone down. I'm assuming you are satisfied already.
Yeah, it was covered by what you asked. So.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. Okay, Bryony, over to you next.
I think Adam had his hand up first, but happy to go first, if that's okay, Adam.
No, feel free.
Thank you. It was around the accessibility of the vehicles that you use. I just wondered, you know, how easy it was for people with mobility difficulties, etc., to use the vehicles.
Yeah, thank you for your question. They're all low floor accessible by wheelchairs. They have 1 wheelchair space per vehicle, and somebody can book a wheelchair space when they're booking by the app or by the phone. And the drivers are very accommodating and will make sure, you know, the ramps pull down and everything like that. So yes, they are fully accessible and compliant.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryony. Adam, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Alice, I think that was a fantastic presentation. I'm actually gobsmacked by the number of trips you've actually managed to make to date. I remember going on it at the very early stages when you were offering, I think, £1.50 rides, and I took a cheeky trip to the pub, which was fantastic, I must say. Chris, going back to your question about people using green spaces, I suspect if you look at the numbers for Thurfield, then I'm guessing that's people going to the Heath. So probably quite a few, because those numbers were quite large. That or the Fox and Duck pub in Thurfield, which is where I went. But the question I was going to ask is obviously you've got some long-term funding issues, which sort of Chris brought up. You also mentioned school trips. Are you in the position where you're able to bid for sort of SEN travel and things like that? And the reason why I ask is I know that's jolly expensive for a council to run. So, you know, county councils pay an absolute fortune on that. And I'm thinking if you could, you know, bid for that sort of those sorts of jobs, then that might be a commercial model that might make you enough money to cover some of the gap.
Yeah, thank you. So essentially, the issue that we have is the demand for demand responsive transport is so high that if we layer too much, we end up removing that flexible nature of the service. So now we've got 7 vehicles in operation. It's much easier for us to take on additional bits that aren't true DRT. And the 2 home to school routes that we do on behalf of children's services are kind of our limit at the moment, because they are those peak times in the morning and in the afternoon where everybody wants transport. So at the moment, we're not looking at taking on any additional routes because we want to be open and flexible for all residents, which is the main purpose of the service. But what we're also looking at doing is looking at, can we help with adult care transport for respite travel, things like that, where this would also be an expensive taxi trip. Could we do it for them? So it's, you know, saving the council money, but also saving residents, you know, in doing it that way. And in addition, dial-a-ride also sits within my remit. So what we're looking at is, can we see where we've got dial-a-ride vehicles that have got some downtime? Can we be using their vehicles to pick up some additional DRT journeys and mutualize those services, which will help if we're treating them both then as almost one service with two slightly different roles. But we're hoping that should also help to bridge the gap. But it's all depending on what we're seeing with the data. And the data for DRT is so rich, and it is instant. So if I looked on the system now, I could see, you know, exactly where people were traveling to and from, and where people are searching. And if they can't get their booking, why can't they get their booking? And it's not static by any means. So we can shape the service to meet that demand. So if we see in a few months' time, actually, we've got scope to pick up another home to school route, we could look to do that. And that's why it's great to work with, because it is very flexible and we can really shape it to benefit everybody in the community as much as possible.
Thank you.
Great. Looks like Matt's had a change of heart, wants to come in after it. Matt, you're on mute.
Apologies. Yeah, it was just to pick up on something Adam said, really. In terms of the pickup points, the drop-off points, you mentioned the data. Is that, what are some of the top ones that we've got in Royston? Do you know? I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be the health centre and the train station, but
I don't know off the top of my head, but I will be able to share that if that's something you're interested in seeing. I can send that over to you tomorrow, and then you'll be able to see a breakdown of the most popular stops.
Yeah, and are there places where people are searching that you don't serve in this area?
Yeah, we do. We see that is the most common reason for us not being able to offer a journey, is somebody typically asking for something that's slightly outside of the border that we operate in, or perhaps at a time that we don't operate. But again, we're able to add stops ourselves, so we have that full control over the shape of the service. So if we have somebody who's saying, we haven't got a stop here and it would really benefit, you know, residents in my village, say, or, you know, it's slightly too far for my elderly neighbour to walk to this stop, could you put one closer? We can then review that and add it in. So we're trying to reduce the number of incomplete searches by fulfilling the need of stop requests. We can't expand the operating zone any further, because we don't want to saturate the service, but we can infill it with other stops. But yeah, that is the main reason why we see people can't access the service.
Great. Thanks, Alice, and thanks, Pete. That's been two really, really interesting and informative presentations. So I think that takes us on now to the next agenda item, which is open discussion. So do we have any questions from the floor about any of the agenda items, or any issues anyone wants to raise?
Just from me, Chair, just if we could try and get a bit of progress on the 3 after 3 and just work out what is happening at some point as soon as possible, if we could just maybe prioritize that, because as I'm sure everyone knows, parking is a particular issue in Royston. Funnily enough, at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, one of the main resident dissatisfaction points about North Herts from Royston residents was around parking and parking charges. I think it's probably quite a good thing if we try and get a wiggle on it.
Yeah, good point. I think, Claire, you've taken a action point for that, haven't you? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, anything else that anyone wants to raise under this item? Oh, Matt?
Yeah, just one more. Sorry, as in relation to the King James Academy, the storm damage, I was just wondering whether one of the county councillors might be able to update the committee on what's going on there and kind of keep us informed.
Thanks, Matt. Fiona?
Yes, there was obviously, I'd imagine everyone's aware that the storm last week caused substantial damage on the premises. So it's obviously an academy, but visited yesterday, saw what the damage was, and it was substantial. And the school are working with the DfE and also with county to try and find some other temporary accommodation, and looking at a number of options, including the Roysia site was mentioned. Obviously, it's in the hands of the insurance professionals as to what is safe and what isn't, and they've given advice as to what is safe in the current situation at King James and what isn't, and the same will happen with any other sites that are put forward or any other options looked at. So at the moment, it's all going through that process, but the urgent thing is to try and get the children back into mainstream school rather than operating virtually, which isn't ideal at all. And obviously we just want the best for the children and not the detrimental situation that will carry on until they're back in school environment.
Thanks, Fiona. Steve, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say there were some questions about why they couldn't just move into Royston, and I had some discussions, and I think the issue is that the building's kind of just been left for the last 5 years, and is not in great condition as a result of that. And it might take almost as long to make Royston usable as it will do to fix the KJAR building. So although that looked like a very simple solution, and the store kind of implied that it was, I think the people from the county who've been in and looked at the building can see that although they could make it available, it's really not something you could just move children into at the moment, which is a pity, because if it was, that would obviously be a good solution. But they tell me that that it's not in that great condition at the moment. So I think there are attempts to find other potential spaces, but it looks like what could have been an obvious solution turns out not to be, which is obviously unfortunate.
Thanks, Steve. Fiona?
It actually ultimately isn't down to county either as to whether the suitability would be from the, if that particular premises was an option, it would have to be given the okay by the insurance professionals and the loss adjusters and everybody else on the safety issues. It wouldn't just be down to county, but they're still looking at all the different options on there.
And then clearly, as an academy, the school actually has to decide what it's going to do as well, doesn't it? The county and others can offer to help them, but ultimately they've got to decide what their preferred way forward is.
Yeah, and funding and whatever because once a school becomes an academy, the local authority has limited powers.
Okay, Bryony, are you wanting to come in on that?
I was just going to ask a question. What sort of proportion of the school is unusable at the moment? Does anyone know that?
Fiona?
Couldn't give you exact proportions, a substantial amount at the moment. They've managed to get one of the years back in, but there are still at least 2 years that aren't able to be back on the senior site. The junior site is fine. That hasn't been affected at all, but it's the senior building. So there's 1 year back in there at the moment. And I think for things like sports activities, they're also enabling those. But it's just the permanent classrooms, and obviously you've got IT equipment in there that's damaged, and the roof is obviously to be mixed because it just isn't safe. And if it was to get any snow or any further heavy rain, it'll be straight back into the building again. So it's just remedial action and trying to get other premises as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Great. Right. Any more under this item? Hello again, Matt.
Sorry, I was just going to check. Are the presentations, are they going to be shared with us afterwards? Is that normal mention of this? Yeah. Okay.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, great. Which brings us then to agenda item 8, board members' activities. Do members have any updates for the area forum at all? Hasn't come up so far. We've covered quite a lot of ground. No one's shooting their hands up, so I don't think there's anything to report under that item. which then takes us through down to the final item of the agenda, future forums and any suggestions for future topics for discussion. I have a couple that have come to mind during this evening's session, but open it up to anyone else if they've got any they'd like to suggest first. Okay, well, I don't know entirely how Ruth would respond if she was here, but I thought maybe not necessarily for the very next forum meeting, but in the not too distant future, having one where we have a discussion on the future of the review of the local plan would be an interesting one for our public. And the other topic that came to mind to me was potentially around management of green spaces and how we're dealing with that in relation to our environmental commitments as a council. That's just a couple of ideas from me. Adam.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to bring up the Royston Leisure Centre changes as a useful one. Obviously, we've got the new Leisure Centre contract. I think that's really useful. Regarding the local plan review, that is, well, there's a progress update that's going to Cabinet at the next Cabinet meeting on that, and it is a planning issue. So bearing in mind there's a review coming, I've just been mindful that it might not be the best thing to discuss at a local forum because we don't have any legal powers to do anything about it or indeed feed into that review at this moment in time. I had some advice from Jeanette around overview and scrutiny committee on this particular point, and it was quite clear that overview and scrutiny committee shouldn't be discussing it because obviously it's going to the review and into third party hands, but just highlighting that as a particular risk. But it might be worth you having a discussion with Jeanette on that one just to see if it's something that we should be discussing.
That's yeah, useful to know. Somehow I suspect if overview and scrutiny aren't allowed to discuss it, I think the chances of me getting a discussion are probably quite low. But,
I'm just quite conscious that if we can't actually discuss or feed into it because of regulatory pieces, then we just got to be very careful what we're discussing, just so we don't go off topic and do anything we shouldn't be doing legally.
Yeah, very wise. Any further suggestions for future topics that we can explore? I think we've been quite a full meeting so far, so I'm not surprised that people aren't overflowing with ideas. Claire, are you wanting to come in?
Yeah. The notes of the last meeting, the suggested topics were what the council are doing to support the high street, cycle networks and community safety. And historically, the police often come along to the March meeting round to talk about, to sort of feedback on community safety issues. So that potentially could be a topic for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that sounds like, from memory, I think we've had pretty good response from members of the public. We've had the police along to discuss their activities locally. So if March is usually when we do that, then I think that makes sense for next time round. Seeing some nods. So hopefully that's an answer at least for next time. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, with another hat on, I was just going to observe that if you want a discussion about the new contract for the leisure centre, it would really be much better to do it at a subsequent meeting once the new contract is in place, and then they can talk about their plans. Really doing it in March would not be very helpful because the new contractor won't be in position, so they won't be able to come and talk about things. And clearly the old contractor is just about to finish, so it's probably not the best time to do that, but might well be worth doing sometime after they've taken over the operation, and they can talk about what their plans are and how things are going to change, how they're going to improve things.
Steve, happy with that. So I was just talking about future item agendas.
Yeah,
generally,
yeah,
but completely fair.
Okay, great. So are we generally happy with the idea of presentation, seeking to get a presentation from local police officers about their activities as the sort of agenda item for discussion at the next session. Seeing nodding, I think that's a yes. Claire, if we can take that forward for next time.
Yep, absolutely. Obviously we liaise with Councillor Brown as well to see if she's happy with that, but I think it's already been on the list as something that could be raised, and we could tie it in with any other community safety issues in Royston at the moment, or any antisocial behaviour, that kind of thing.
Great. Okay, well, I think that unless anyone else has got anything they'd like to jump in with the last minute, I think that brings us to the close of the agenda. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time this evening and for your very useful input in all the discussions. And good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Laura can stop the
I'll
YouTube
stop the
now.
live stream now and then I'll end the meeting as well.
Thank you.